The last talk you will hear today. Okay, now it's getting there. Okay, let's do. Right? Okay. Hello, good evening. I fully realize it's been a long day. And probably this is one of the last things you're going to hear today. So what I'm going to try to do is not take you to the future of medicine. I'm going to try to take you to the future of healthcare, which I believe is different. Medicine is trying to treat people. I think we can build a world where in the future we no longer will get sick. And that is the story I'm going to try to explain. For me, this is the biggest invention ever. Someone has an idea what this is? It's soap. Soap managed to extend our lifespan with 100% in 200 years. Why? Because soap teaches us to deal with basic hygiene, right? And I don't know whether we can digitize soap. This is eye soap. That's a joke, right? That's a piece of soap. But the thing is, more than 200 million kids, they hardly realize what soap does. And this is a project from UNICEF. UNICEF is providing a piece of soap which serves as a pencil, and that piece of soap is basically used for the teacher in the village to tell, can you please make a drawing of a forest? And in these villages, there is more toilets, there's more smartphones than toilets, which is the real problem. But that smartphone from my teacher allows me to make a picture of the drawing I made. She sends that drawing to a colleague teacher, and that teacher says, that's a nice drawing, but in my village, someone made a nicer one. And I have to find water to rinse my hands and to have the place to make a new drawing. So digital technology allows me to create an experience and to teach me how to deal with health. And that is what digital is going to do. It will bring something novel to us so that we can learn and create experiences not to get sick, but to remain healthy. This is my hospital. Once I reach the door of a room, the handle recognizes me, and it sanitizes, basically sanitation on my hands. I don't have to go to the soap. The door feels me I'm coming, and I get decontaminated while working. It's healthcare by delight. Or this one. If you think about frictions in healthcare, this is a pretty cool, super simple technique which allows me, with a simple device, to see my veins. And it tells my patient, it gives my patient the trust that I will not miss the vein, that I will basically get the needle in at the right place. And that is what I would like to address a few times. How can we take frictions out of healthcare so that healthcare becomes delightful, something to look forward to? In Moscow you have Uber, and you have a lot of taxis. When Uber was launching an advertisement campaign a few years ago, they allowed you to order a nurse which came to your home to provide you with a flu injection. That was such a tremendous success that since then Uber has a service which is called Uber Health. This should work, but it doesn't. Uber Health. And Uber Health is a service now which I can order to bring healthcare to my home with a taxi service. So I don't have to go to the hospital. The doctor comes to me, the nurse comes to me. And the same here. If you think about blood, no one likes giving blood. This is one of the first devices which I am going to use to put on my arm. It's a patch, and I don't have to punch into your arm. This patch sucks blood out of your arm, no needles. And the patient finds that fantastic. It's no friction. It's harmless. It's healthcare by delight. And we can go one step further. We will still get sick, right? When Amazon decided to enter into healthcare, the first acquisition they made was a company called PillPack. PillPack comes to my home 8 o'clock in the morning. They knock my door and they deliver me all the drugs I need to take at 8 o'clock in the morning. At 1 o'clock they come again. A human being knocks my door and brings me the 6 drugs I have to take at 1 o'clock. And at 6 o'clock again. So I don't have to think. Basically, healthcare helps me to remain drug adherent, to be compliant. And that is how you can start to look to removing friction after friction and to make healthcare almost kind of automatic. That is the next step. This is a pill coming from a Swiss company called Proteus. And this pill contains a very tiny radio sensor. And once the pill enters my stomach acid releases the sensor, and the sensor sends a message to a patch on my arm, to this patch, right? And that patch sends a text message to my son, Daddy took his medication at 5, or didn't. I no longer have to think. The drug is fully automated and allows my kid to take care from me, because he can follow whether I took the drug. Why do we use this? Because people with schizophrenia, they have periods where they don't realize it's time to take the medication. So the medication thinks in your place. There is something with the connection here. All right. Now this is something you might have heard about in the conference a few times. We start to move to things like voice tech. You have seen these loudspeakers from Amazon, from Google, from Apple, and most people use them to ask, what is the weather in Moscow tomorrow? When we started to play with this, I gave this to my father. And the loudspeaker told my father, it's time to take your medication, Dad, at 5. Which he found cool, but not cool enough. It was not human. It's this Alexa voice, or the Siri voice. No one likes that. So what we did, we scouted for a piece of technology coming from a company called Lyrebird. And Lyrebird allows me to talk to my computer. I'm sorry, I have to go back. 1. Can you go? Yeah. So Lyrebird allows me to talk to my computer for 2 minutes. And after 2 minutes, I can type whatever text which is pronounced with my voice. And we combine that with my loudspeaker. And now, at 5 o'clock, my father hears me saying that it's time to take your medication. And now he finds it fantastic, right? Because it's the human voice of someone he recognizes, which makes it way more human. And that is what technology is going to do. It's going to make doctors better, really better. Look to this. This is Suki. In my country, I'm from Belgium, if you go to a doctor, the doctor spends 5 minutes time typing on a computer, not looking to me, but typing text in a machine. This is what I use. It's a loudspeaker. And all the things I tell to my patients are recorded and automatically put in my patient dossier. So I have 10 minutes of FaceTime. Which doctor do you like? The second one, right? It's the one who uses technology to become a better doctor. And that's the next step. This is a hospital in St. Louis in Missouri, the States. From the outside, it looks like every hospital you know. That's how it looks, bottom up. But from the inside, there is not a single bed, not a single patient, no patients. Every patient is monitored by 6 screens, a doctor and a nurse, and the patient stays at home. The fascinating thing is not the technology. The fascinating thing is the trust the hospital built with its doctors, because the doctor still decides whether I can remain at home, but believes that technology can do better. And everywhere on the planet, if you ask, where do you want to stay as long as possible, it's at home, right? Not in the hospital. And therefore, that's a good trick. This is a hospital which installed a man's cave. So that men, in order to motivate them to get tested for prostate cancer and colon cancer, get motivated to come to the hospital because they recognize all their favorite sports kind of t-shirts and balls. And all of a sudden, I look forward to go to that hospital. It's healthcare by delight. It helps me to convince my patient to come to me. Now, I mentioned that everywhere on the planet, I think here too, people want to stay at home as long as possible, right? But not in Japan. Japan is the only country on the planet where people are fine to die in the hospital. And you know why? Japan is the most robotized company on the planet. In my hospital in Japan, this is what I have. It's Robier. It's a robot nurse. And she can get me out of the bed, into the bath, and into a wheelchair. And patients find that fantastic. Because there is 2 little doctors and 2 little nurses to take care of me. But at least the robot takes care of me. I don't want to die alone. And that is fascinating, because technology can extend human beings and make us, even while using robots, more human. Because if your hospital is not having robots, I don't want to come to your hospital, because there I will die by myself. Right? Let's take that one step further. By the way, these are the first wheelchairs which are sexy. I mean, it's not because I'm in a wheelchair that it should be something old-fashioned. This is going to be like, cool, look at me, right? And with the wheelchair, you can start to do interesting things. You know Google Maps, right? I'm in a wheelchair. And there is a number of places on the planet where I cannot get. But if I find out that I can get somewhere, what I now can do, I can use Google Maps, and I put a mark, a needle on Google Maps as a wheelchair user. And all my colleague wheelchair users see that. And I help them to find out which places become accessible for them. So patients, they work together in a community to help other patients, using a basic service everybody can use. That's healthcare by delight. It creates, well, it doesn't get me out of the wheelchair, but at least it gives me an experience which I couldn't get earlier before. Now, if you think about using technology, we're going to start to use technology, yes, for disabled people. This is Sesame. This is the first super simple app where I can look to the app, whatever app, and I can control an app with my eyes. So I'm no longer, I don't have hands. I can touch, I can simply look. So it gives me kind of the power again, which I lost when I thought I got disabled. But still, I haven't made my point. Because I promised you to go to healthcare, right? And not to stick to sick care. So let's try to revert a bit. One of the biggest challenges we have when we get old is to think in time to drink. People who get old, they dehydrate. They forget to drink in time. So we made a patch which sticks to my arm and measures dehydration. Good, not good enough. Because if I'm 85 years old and I forget to drink, how can I interpret my patch, right? But being 85, I watch quite a bit of TV. And now, every 3 hours, my TV says, Koen, it's time to go drinking. And that is something I still remember. So I use biology and technology to change my behavior invisibly. And now we made it cooler. We made a deal with a bottle maker. Not this one, with Vittel. And Vittel allows us to make screw caps. which we print, 3D print. And we can print them, ploops, in a sense that a flag comes out when it's time to drink. So imagine, your mother, living by herself, 85, she lives in her apartment, and a flag comes out of the bottle. It's time to drink, right? That is delightful. That is invisibly that I don't have to think any longer. In Japan, we try to do it this way. In Japan, we fly with a drone into service flats, and on the drone is a glass of water. That's something I cannot neglect. It's healthcare by default, almost. It comes to me without me having to think. So the first thing you have to remember is this. The move of digital technology into healthcare will allow two things. It will allow to remove friction after friction after friction, and this way it will help to create novel experiences for your patients. And the biggest friction we're going to try to get out is getting sick in the first place, right? That is what we're going to try to do in the next part. Now, this is, apologies for the picture. This was the first patient I've ever seen. This was a patient with a salivary gland tumor. He waited too long and he got a twin head, right? Everything is there except for a brain. And this is one of the things which formed me big time. This started my career, understanding why people get cancer. And during my first years of my career, I started to develop drugs as well. I made medication to treat brain cancer in children. I can tell you, more confronting than a 6-year-old child with brain cancer, it will probably never get. And the best thing we could do is send these kids on a camp. And that camp was called Delight. And that's where I started my career with doing these things. And then my world changed completely, really completely, when I started or discovered something 2,200 years old, and which blew my mind. The clicker is not working. Can I have a different clicker, please? Can I have a different clicker? Can I have a pointer? Okay. So, remember this rule, by the way. Innovation is very often not about reinventing the wheel. Innovation is very often stealing something which is already out there, but giving it a different sauce. And I did that myself. When I discovered a system 2,000 years old in China, where the doctor was paid in some parts of the country as long as people in the village remained healthy. And once you got sick, you no longer had to pay. I'm going to repeat. So the doctor was paid to remain and keep people healthy, which I found fascinating, right? And I published a book on that 5 years ago, Sick No More. And when the book came out, I thought, well, there is a number of options. Option one is that a doctor says bullshit. Nonsense. Because every patient, which is not a patient, is a customer we lose, right? But you might recall Kodak. Kodak, biggest photography company on the planet, remember? Do you know what the first company was on the planet with a digital camera? Kodak. But after 3 months, no one was buying that digital camera. And the management said, let's hide that. 6 years later, Kodak was gone. Because everybody started to use a digital camera in a smartphone. So when I started to tell healthcare professionals, pharma, doctors, hospitals, that maybe we were going to build a world in which we no longer would get sick, everybody recognized Kodak. No one wants to be Kodak. And that's why people started to listen. Because imagine that the guy would be right. Now, just to make one thing clear, I'm not saying we're going to live forever. Dying is the best invention ever, really. Dying makes you strive to something. Imagine you would live forever, you would delay things till the day after tomorrow. Never do it. Do it tonight. Really? And let me try to explain it differently. Imagine I try to sell you a watch which tells you the number of days you still have to live. Who wants that? No one, right? But imagine I sell you this watch. This is a watch where you can do something in your lifestyle or your environment, and you can prevent the number of days left coming down, or the number even goes up. Who wants that? Everybody, right? The day before you die, you still want to be healthy. And that's the dream we have. And that's a dream I think Moscow should have. I think that's a dream Russia should have. Healthy Moscow is building a world in which you die young, but as late as possible. Fair? That is the world we're going to build. How? How are we going to build that? Well, as a doctor, with all respect, you know nothing about your patient. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you a new concept. The concept of delight. Delight is wow. People do not link healthcare to wow, right? People link healthcare to, whew, I want to get out of healthcare as long as possible. And if it happens, well, this is my birthday list. I expect if you give me something for my birthday list, well, I'm happy with. But imagine that I give you something you didn't expect to get from me, then you're super happy, right? I'm a hospital, and I'm telling you, you don't have to come to my hospital, you can stay home. Delight, right? So imagine I can become the doctor who says, I'm gonna keep you healthy. Delight, right? So how can we get there? First of all, I have to make sure that you do not think that you can only do that with digital. Sometimes it's not about technology. Sometimes it's about super simple things. If I have a kit, which I have to put on an infuse, what we do, around the infuse, we put Batman of Superman caskets. And we sell the kit Superpower. Same product as without the casket, but the kit loves it. Have you seen these scanners? It's a scanner. It looks like a pirate ship. And when the kid goes in the scanner, it tack, 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 not nice. And now we tell the kid, it's the pirates which are shooting. The kids love that. Yeah? Or this is an 85-year-old patient. It's a shill, a CAR-T patient. You know what we do to bring delight? We go and get him with a car to the hospital. When he comes in the waiting room, we invite music bands and they come play music. A shill has a dog. In the hospital we have a kennel, so he can bring the dog to the hospital. And while he's on the infuse, we learn him to use Facebook Messenger or WhatsApp. And when he comes back home, he has a new way to communicate with his grandchildren. That's the hospital you like, right? That's the one which provides delight. So therefore, if you are in a hospital, start to think about hiring a patient delight officer. And maybe you don't have to hire. I think all of you will become delight officers. If you allow me to go a little bit further. Excuse me, can I have a different pointer? Can you switch the pointer? Because it doesn't work well. So, why did we lose that Chinese system? Well, who in the room is doctor? Not a lot. Oh well, okay. Forgive me. I'm going to try whether this is better. Yeah, forgive me. But I think, as a doctor, you hardly know anything about your patients. And let me try to illustrate. If I send a package from here in Moscow to Berlin, I use FedEx or UPS, right? And I can trace my package every 5 seconds. which I find absolutely normal. My average patient, my cancer patient, my Alzheimer patient, my cardiovascular patient is 8,750 hours a year by himself, not linked to me as a healthcare provider. So a FedEx package is better off than my patient. That's not normal, right? And that is what digital is going to change. Digital allows us to enter into the real life of our patient and in the ultimate world to be there 8,750 hours. So that we see things from happening in time, that we can predict things, can prevent things, and this way go to that Chinese doctor again, right? That's what we're going to build. How? I'm going to introduce 3 guardian angels to build that world. And these guardian angels are the ones which I think will change healthcare to the better dramatically. And I'm going to start with the first guardian angel, which I fully realize is the hardest to grasp. It's hard to imagine how it looks. But I think it's the biggest present you ever got from your mom and your dad. It's your biological code, 3 billion digits large, your genome, right? Just to put everybody on the same page, 99.9% of us is all identical. Only 0.1% makes us all unique, right? We are changing or different from monkeys only 2%. Well, some people a little bit less. And for the discussion here, I only restrict myself to DNA. I fully realize there is levels above, but for this discussion, I stick to that basic golden code. So who has seen the picture at the left, ever? Someone? It's a hard disk from IBM 1954. It required a plane to get transported, right? The hard disk, the storage in your smartphone, is 10 billion times smaller, cheaper, and more powerful. Until a few years ago, that was the fastest technological development ever made by man. Increasing computer power every 18 months, 100% better. No longer. The most impressive technological development ever made by man is our ability to identify these 3 billion digits, no longer for $3 billion in 10 years. That's how we did it the first time. But now we can do it with the device you see here at the right. With this device, I can sequence your genome in 3 hours for, let me translate, something like 300,000 ruble. The question is not who will pay, the question is, do you want that? Let me try to find out. I'm going to show a few things first. This was my father in the intensive care a few years ago. Double infection of the lungs. And what people then do, they take some liquid out of the lungs, grow it on a plate, hope that bacteria grow, and then decide which antibiotic to give. After 3 days, nothing was growing, and my father was ready to die. So we used this device. Took a little bit liquid out of the lungs, sequenced every bacterium in the lung, compared against a database of every bacterium ever seen, and in 3 hours we got the right antibiotic. That's from 3 days to die to 3 hours to treat, which is better, right? But not good enough, because he got sick in the first place. Yeah? So when I sequenced myself 10 years ago, full genome, there's a number of things I found out. I will get blind. I don't know when. But I found that fascinating to know. Because since I found out, I started to take one supplement, lutein, which delays the degradation of the back of my eye. And it gives me at least a feeling that I do well, right? But it got more fascinating when this came to the market. This was the first piece of software, the second, 2 years old, where I now can use my smartphone to scan my eye, and it looks whether my eye is getting worse. if that would be the turn, then I can still use the drugs which are out there and they would work. While if I wait without treating myself till my eye really gets sick, I will turn blind. So knowing my genome, changing something in my diet, and using a software as a medical device algorithm made my life, in my opinion, much richer. Because I will encounter things in time. We currently have more than 60 pieces of software which no longer require a doctor, which are artificial intelligence algorithms which I can use to start predicting things in my patients. And if things will happen, I still have this. This is Be My Eyes. Even blind people use smartphones, really. So if I will turn blind, I'm part of the Be My Eyes community, and I can do this. I don't see, I point to what I don't see, and I have 25 friends and colleagues who are willing to tell me what I don't see. So I use my smartphone to augment myself, becoming part of a community. The app was out for 3 months, and 250,000 people subscribed. Now it's 10 times more. That is what digital is do. It's expanding, basically getting frictions out of my life, making my life better. Now imagine I would stop here, and I would ask you, who is willing to get her or his genome sequenced? The Health Assembly will do it for free. They don't know that yet. Who wants it? Interesting. Even not 1 in 5. If I ask people why not, then the majority says Angelina. Angelina lost her mom to ovarian cancer. Did a very tiny analysis of her genome, turned out to be predisposed, and removed her 2 breasts, right? The majority of young people, my students are 22, they say, well, that's why I don't want to know, because how can I deal with that insight? Till I show this. This is the first bra, which is in clinical development, which contains a tiny sensor at the inside of the cup, which sits on my breast, well, on Angelina's breast. And only if a tumor starts to grow, it measures the heat of the tumor. Maybe it doesn't happen. Luckily, I still have my breasts. And if it happens, maybe I'm 55 or 65. The kids are out of the house, and it's easier to make that decision, right? The same with men. If I ask men, can I look to the chance that you get colon cancer? The majority says no, because what you're going to do is put a tube in the back of my body. We no longer do that. Now we have very tiny pills with a 360-degree camera, which I swallow, which swim to my intestines, make better pictures than ever before, and turn 1 in 5 men saying yes into 3 in 5. So technology changes behavior and starts to allow me providing preventive care. Right? You still with me? Yeah, right? Okay. And then this happens. By the way, it seems that we have the first genes now for the biggest epidemic on the planet. Some people are predisposed to end lonely. If there is one thing you want to avoid, never end lonely. So these are people we can start to screen and find out that we can make sure that there is a community to prevent them from getting lonely. Now when I look to my genome, I can tell you there is only 1 digit currently which is linked to a very high chance to get Alzheimer's. That my heart, I think it was beating 250 times a minute when I was looking to see whether I was predisposed to get Alzheimer's, right? But mentally, I had decided that if that turns out to be the case, I would start to fill in a number of extra sudokus. I would start to learn an extra number of bank accounts by heart, of phone numbers. That's one of the best advices I can give. The majority of you in the audience know 2, maximum 3 mobile numbers by heart. Do me a favor. Try to learn 6 by heart by Monday, and you will keep your brain 6 months younger. As simple as that. But that point is not the point I want to make. The point is that we will probably need new jobs, new healthcare jobs, to find out whether people are willing to know. Because maybe you don't want to know that you can know it. And you might say, I know that you can know it, but don't tell me. And you say, I'm fine to know, right? We need different coaches before we will bring this to the consumer, because this will have a tremendous impact on, well, putting fear into people. And then this happens. In my country, the last 3 years, we have lost 3 soccer players from the B team because their heart stopped beating while playing soccer. It's absolutely crazy that it still happens, because we know who is predisposed for that to happen, based on the DNA. So do we then have to tell, stop playing sports? No. What we can simply do is implant a small defibrillator on the heart, and when my heart stops beating, the machine goes on and life goes on. What do you choose? Losing your child, 18 years old, or sequencing your child's DNA and doing one small surgery? Not hard, eh? It's a second. And that's why the world started to become interesting when these things came out. Initially gadgets. However, this is no longer a gadget. When my cardiologist sent me home, in the past he sent me home with an appointment the 1st of March. Now he sends me home with a casket around my smartphone, this one. And this casket around my smartphone allows me to put my fingers on, 10 seconds, it records my complete heart function, stores it in the cloud, compares against baseline, and when something is of a baseline, my cardiologist, well, the nurse, calls and says, Koen, we're not going to wait till the 1st of March. I want to see you next week. I'm going to tweak something. Which cardiologist do you like? The second. So in these gadgets, the Apple Watch came out. I think you heard that for one cardiovascular disease, it's called atrial fibrillation. Now, there is a tool, FDA approved in the watch, which I'm using 24/7. So that all of a sudden, I become a better doctor for my patients, because I can watch atrial fibrillation from happening by a simple watch. But I hear you think, well, not convincing. Because the majority of my patients is not running around with a watch, right? And that's why we made this. This is an app. It's called FibriCheck. We developed it in Belgium. It's now FDA approved, which is simply using the flashlight of my smartphone. And the flashlight of my smartphone allows me to shine through my finger. And my heart rate variation changes the color of my fingertip. My eye cannot tell. My smartphone does. And with an algorithm on the smartphone and with a free app, I can send my patient home with something he can use all the time. Because every patient starts to have a smartphone, right? And that's how I will start to enter into the real life of my patient. Start to be able to offer him new tools. Now luckily, because that genome thing might a little bit too early, my health is basically what I got from my parents, but for a big time, where I live and how I live, right? By the way, do you know what the best 2 indicators are for how old you are going to be? It's the age your parents will have when they die and your postal code, your zip code. The postal code tells you something about your social status. That combined with the age your parents will have is currently still the best we have. So we can make that really, really better. And so when all these gadgets came out, Fitbits and Nikes, people said, well, it's not going to fly. People will use that for 3 months. Well, let me show you differently. This is Care Predict, which I gave to my mother, 85 years old. I don't need to know how many steps my mother takes. But my mother wakes up at 8 o'clock in the morning, goes from the bedroom to the bathroom, from the bathroom to the kitchen, and from the kitchen to the living room. Each time, same time. But if she needs 30% more time in July than in January, it's because she becomes breathless because liquid starts to fill her lungs. And that's a marker for acute heart failure. So I use that wristband that counts the time to go from A to B to C, and based on that, I have a guardian angel which anticipates acute heart failure in time. And she loves that. When I told my children, don't eat too fast, they said, what is not too fast? I gave them this tableware. And this tableware counts the serving time. And when it goes too fast, it shakes. It learned my kids to adapt behavior by a cool, delightful tool. Or this one, most used app on the planet. It tells the 2 best days to get pregnant. So you can tell your husband it's time to come home. When people start to use that, still people didn't get pregnant. And the company gave people who did not get pregnant a reduction to the IVF clinic, to the in vitro fertilization clinic. 250,000 women delivered a baby seemingly because of that combination. They started to track their child during pregnancy and a year after pregnancy so detailed that this is the most detailed database of, well, pediatric behavior ever made. And it started with a super simple app which tells me what the best 2 dates are to get pregnant. And believe me, every single measurement your doctor, you perform on your patient will be able to perform at home with a smartphone or a small device from 2 years on from now. Medical grade, everything. This is the pap smear. So you can do cervical cancer screening at home. You don't have to, but if you like, you can with this kind of device. Or this one, only out a few months. The first device, a patch, which measures blood pressure 24/7 without a cuff. This is the first thing you always measure on your patient when he comes to you, right? No longer need it. You get the data from your patient. And so when these things came out, and when I was on stage, people always asked, well, what can we trust? What is out there? And therefore we launched this database. Here. This is the database with every single certified digital health app. If you look to the Apple Store and the Google Store, in each of these stores is 130,000 apps. Where do you start? But these are the ones which are certified. Any idea how many? Only 180. 180. Not a lot. But at least as a doctor, if you know these, you will become a better doctor. Because you can start to provide services to your patients you couldn't do in the past. And this one is a nice example. This is Migraine Buddy. Migraine Buddy, I subscribe to every patient with a headache or with migraine. What it does, the patient decides. When the pain starts, he points to the screen where the pain starts, here. And the patient decides how much he tells to the app. I have been walking so much, or Fitbit tells. I have been sleeping or not. I have been drinking tea, coffee, cognac, whatever. And during the day, we ask, how do you feel? And the patient replies with an emoticon. After 4 weeks, the app found out, Koen, your headaches always start on Monday. When you come back from London on Friday, sleep longer than 8:30 on Saturday, drink more than 6 coffees on Saturday, don't do 7,000 steps on Sunday, and forget to drink 2 liters of water on Monday. No one ever told me that. After 4 weeks, the app found out. That is delight, right? And the patient decides what he shares. So if we can start to think about that, And if you believe me that patients are really willing to respond to you as a doctor with emoticons, you can start to make better patient dossiers by interfering and asking now and then, how are you? So where will this lead? Well, now it becomes more exciting. A few years ago, we sent 6,000 people with diabetes home with something super simple, a step counter. How simple can it be, right? And we divided the 6,000 patients in two groups, 3,000, 3,000. The 3,000 patients, which did an extra 2,000 steps a day, in 1 in 5 cases, 2 years later, were free from worsening of the disease. They didn't get more sick, and 1 in 5 even got better by simply moving. That was one of the first proofs, best medical journal, that exercise is one of the best drugs you can give to people. And now I hear you think, sure, we know. But how do you do that, changing behavior? Well, this is the first option, maybe over the top. This is Pavlov. And Pavlov gives me a small electric shock if I'm not moving enough. Some people like that big time. In times of 50 shades of grey, there seems to be a market for that. This is better. This is a new bank in Melbourne. And the bank is designed in such a way that there is so many stairs in the bank that if I go from my office to the coffee machine and from the coffee machine to my bank, to my boss, I do enough steps in the bank so I don't have to do it at home. So the bank keeps me healthy. This is Nike in Manhattan. 3 vending machines. I get something out of the vending machine if I first prove that I moved. And you have been doing things here as well. I don't know whether that's still alive. This is the Alpha Bank. You've seen that, huh? The Alpha Bank pays a higher interest on my bank account if I do 10,000 steps a day. That's no altruism, huh? You know, huh? It keeps me longer as a client eventually. Huh? Or they give me this kind of challenge. This is what I measure with my step counter. And they asked me to make, well, images while walking Moscow. So we can decide we're going to make a Christmas tree by walking. And we win a prize if we can do that. So it becomes kind of fun to become healthy. And this one is a really cool one. Who is using Netflix? You know what it is, huh? Pretty soon, you will be able to pick your favorite character from your Netflix series and program that as a coach on your smartphone. And you can watch the next episode of your favorite series only if you first move. So we have an experience they didn't. We feel healthier, they didn't. We are happier. You see my point? I start to get experiences by being healthy. And this comes from Russia as well, from Sochi, from the Olympics in Sochi. It was a vending machine. It was an ad. If I could bend 30 times to my knees, within 2 minutes, I got a free ride on the metro. This is Mexico 2019. In every metro station in Mexico, these machines are being installed. So the country pays me to first exercise and ride for free. That starts to resemble the Chinese doctor, remember? Who was paid to keep me healthy. In Dubai, I get 1 gram of gold for every 2 kilograms I lose via exercise. I'm way too expensive getting diabetes. I'm less expensive being pre-diabetic, right? And then here a number of you think, well, you make it way too easy. By the way, that's a cool one as well. This is a Wi-Fi wall at the beach in Peru. And only in the shadow you get Wi-Fi. It's digital, mobile, fun, nicely designed, and prevents me from getting skin cancer, right? So how can we take it one step further? 2 things. First of all, if I tell my elderly patient, you should walk more, not easy if this turns out to be the case. What is wrong on this picture? No lights in the streets, right? So my patient doesn't dare to walk out if the lights are broken. So I would like to know as a doctor that I have to call the city council and tell them, can you please fix the lights in the street of my patient, right? Otherwise she will not move. And that is a real world data point I need to become that Chinese doctor. And I hear you think, well, Mr. Katz, you're making it way too simple. Because healthcare is way more than counting steps, right? So let's take the next level. This is Nestlé. Nestlé in Japan. Nestlé allows me to take a picture of what I eat, and based on the picture, it tells me which vitamins or which supplements to take on top. Right? This is the most complex picture you have seen so far. Because imagine, I'm eating a bagel. You know what a bagel is, huh? Yeah. The picture doesn't know whether at the inside of the bagel is a piece of chocolate or a nut. But I live in a street where the bakery only makes bagels with chocolate. So probably my picture is a bagel with chocolate. And that real world data points I need to know to start helping you better. So a few years ago, I was sitting with a number of my colleagues in the north of Italy, in Alba, in Piemonte. And we were writing a paper on what is the best diet advice you can give to people to live as long as possible without cancer. And now you know, it's the Mediterranean diet with a lot of olive oil and blah, blah, blah. But we were sitting in Alba, and Alba you should know because pigs, pigs get truffles out of the ground. If you haven't eaten a truffle yet, you haven't lived yet. One of my colleagues was Italian, and this picture came out. A picture, I'm sorry, I have to go back. This picture came out. Why is this connection so bad? This is a picture of North America. And every McDonald's is a flashlight. And that's interesting, my colleague said, because 8 years ago, in the entire North Italian region, there was only one McDonald's. So how do I prove that I keep you healthy? Because I give you the proper diet? Or because I don't send you to McDonald's? You see my point, eh? That's why I need big, big data to be able to tell cause and correlation. And this is, by the way, a pretty cool new tool to start helping out. I can now make a picture of a menu in a restaurant, and the algorithm on my phone recognizes the ingredients, and based on my biology, on my biological profile, it advises me in augmented reality which to avoid, which is perfect to take. So it becomes kind of me no longer having to think. It's the hospital, it's a restaurant providing me an experience. And therefore this is kind of next level. Now we have to ask patients, what do you drink or what do you eat? No longer so. If I drink tea, it's like this. If I drink coffee, it's like this. If I drink espresso, it's like... I can simply look to the measurement of a wrist and can tell what you have been drinking. The company who developed it is called Clue. Clue has been acquired a few weeks ago by Medtronic. Medtronic, they're here on the bench as well. Medtronic tries to think about how to treat diabetes patients in the future. No longer just with machines, changing behavior. And that is how you capture behavior, by simply looking to how I move my wrist. And this way, by knowing these things, we can start to become different doctors. This is one of the fastest growing digital health companies on the planet. It's called Omada. And Omada sends me home with a super accurate scale and calls me 4 times a day, and asks me, I want to weigh you. Did you think about the diet I advised you? In 3 months' time, they have proven real-world evidence that you can change people's behavior by human coaching and by a super simple scale. So we had exercise, we had food. This is next. This is Moody's. Moody's allows you to talk to your smartphone 2 minutes. After 2 minutes, it tells in which emotional state you are. It's pretty freaky, but it's pretty right as well. And that kind of data we start to use to start anticipating the biggest epidemic coming to mankind. And the biggest epidemic coming to mankind is no longer diabetes. It's loneliness. Especially hitting 18 to 20-year-old people who are fantastic in keeping up appearances with their social network on the smartphone, but which have a hard time to say, well, I'm Koen, who are you? What are we going to do in the real world? So we started to use social media to capture that as well. This comes from Instagram. Do you know what Instagram does? Huh? You send a picture and you add a color layer on top. We now have data from people using orange and red layers. Within a month, they start to move to the use of blue and gray, and 1 month later are depressed. Not surprising. Orange and red, happiness, right? Blue and gray are cold colors. So voice, social media profile, facial expression are the tools we can combine to start knowing our patients better, easier. Now, a number of things people don't dare to tell. Sometimes I feel anxious, afraid. I don't even like to tell my wife. And you know what my solution now is? Woobot. Woobot is my psychologist. You can download Woobot tonight. Really do that. He will be 24/7 with you. And he will start a conversation with you. And he will know you better than you know yourself. You might say, I don't want that. But we have helped a lot of people already to deal with mental issues because they feel they have someone to talk to, which they didn't dare to do in the past. Not to their wife, not to their best friend, not to a doctor, but to a physical avatar Woobot. And sometimes Woobot does do the following. Faraday is a cafe in Toronto. When I enter that cafe, all my internet or Wi-Fi is quenched. And the only thing I can do is talk. No smartphone any longer. This is a pepper mill, which I can use in a restaurant, which kills all the signal of all the smartphones around the table. And why? Look to a restaurant. A family of 5 people. They don't talk to each other. They talk to their smartphone, right? So we have to find solutions for that as well. This is a Dutch designer who has made tableware. And the tablecloth contains a small pocket. And I first have to put my phone in the pocket, and then they come and serve me. Unfortunately, that's what we need as well, to get the balance right between more digital and to more kind of, human. And by the way, what you can subscribe to people is not just Woobot, also this. Doctors in Toronto and Montreal subscribe a visit to the museum. For a lot of things, that's fine. Sometimes we send people out in the green. We're building a new hospital, which on one hand I hate, because every new hospital is a failure in my world. But the hospital, the waiting rooms are in the forest, in the green. There is water next to the hospital. And we send people who have to wait on a boat, and they first go fishing, and they relax. And they can get a kind of delight. So where is this bringing us? On one hand, you could argue, if this is going to happen, then at some point in time, we will have data. Maybe 24/7. And the good news is that we can start to have so much insight that we can start to anticipate disease, right? And if I can start to anticipate disease, I can get the biggest friction out of sick care, which is getting sick in the first place. That's the good news. But I hear you think, well, whoa. How are we going to deal with things like, well, privacy and ethics, right? Well, Let me try to tackle that. Today is Sunday. Who is willing to tell me where he or she will be tonight at 9 o'clock? 1, 2, 4. Okay. A few people are okay with that. The majority of you says, well, Mr. Kaas, none of your business, right? Well, if you go to Disneyland, before you go to Disneyland, you get a box sent home, this box, with magic bands. And in the box are bands which allow you, when you enter the park, to walk into the park without payments. Nothing special, that's the product, wireless payments. But you know what I hate when I go to Disneyland? That is waiting with my children 45 minutes in front of Avatar. Not nice. 2 minutes before 9 o'clock, the band tells me, Koen, if you leave now from here in the park to Avatar, there is no line. That's a pretty cool service. I'm willing to give up my location 2 minutes before 9 because I get a service in return, right? That's the future of privacy. I give you a data point and you give me more in return. By the way, we came to the park and my wife got flowers from Disneyland. Is it a problem if she would not have received flowers? No. My wife's birthday is the 4th of September. And we came there the weekend of the 4th of September. I had filled in a form with my birthday, the birthday of my kids. The flowers I will never forget. That's delight. I gave data points. You gave me something I even didn't expect to get. That is the future of healthcare. And that's where I'm going to end with. So you're no longer this doctor, the one who says, well, Koen, it's time to put your cream on. No. You can become the doctor who says, Koen, you have been walking with your dog in a forest. And in the forest, a number of flowers are blossoming. You're allergic to the seeds of these flowers. Your dog is full of seeds of these flowers. Please wash your dog. That's a cool doctor. That's a delight doctor. And that doctor can have different forms. He doesn't need to be here with me all the time. So what you see here, this is the real doctor, who is basically as a hologram projected next to the patient. So she can become my virtual doctor based on insights of things I measure, but still look real to me to provide me kind of human insights. Now, in order for that world to work, this is the most important word you will have seen the last 4 days. Trust. If you trust me, we can change the world. If you do not trust me, it stops. This is the key thing to make innovation work. Let me try to illustrate. What is the biggest hotel company on the planet? The biggest hotel company on the planet. Someone? It used to be Sheraton, Hilton, no longer so. It's a website. It's Airbnb. Airbnb basically has my apartment on the website, here, and this guy is going to sleep in my apartment, in my bed. He has the keys of my house. That's based on trust, right? This is my Uber driver. He takes my daughter from here to there. Maybe he kind of kidnaps my daughter. It doesn't seem to happen. It's based on trust. Look to this. This is Airbnb. And Airbnb tells you the price of apartments. This is in a city in Belgium. That's how the apartment looks from the inside. That's the average price. And click, 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 you're done, right? This is San Francisco. Blue, hotels in San Francisco. Red, Airbnbs in San Francisco. One website connecting data brought hospitality to an entire city. Blue is your hospital. Red is your primary doctor. The things I've shown you will provide healthcare to basically everywhere by simply be connected. And that brings me to my very last point. This is a picture of the city where I live, in Antwerp, in Belgium. And in Antwerp, in Belgium, we monitor part of the city. We know which airlines fly around the city. We know how many people cross red light, orange light, green light. We know the distribution of pollen, of pollution in the city. We know quite a bit. I apologize for the word, but these are my sick data. This is my genome. These are my brain data. This is my voice. This is my social media profile. Basically, all these things together, they define who I am. These data define me as a human being. Now, I have used the word delight already a few times. Delight, ultimate experience, closest to magic, but still real. Magic is not real. Now, there is a company in the States which is called Magic. And you know what they sell? If you want to fly with a helicopter from next doors to St. Petersburg, in 2 hours they get you a helicopter. If you want to have 10 kilograms of strawberries, in 2 hours they get you 2 kilograms of strawberries. They get you whatever you like. You have to pay for that. They are your ultimate personal assistant, right? Everybody would love to have an ultimate personal assistant. So how can I now combine the last two things? Well, with this. In 2020, when you make something, a car, you no longer make a car first. You have so many data from making a car yesterday that you can make a digital copy. It's called a digital twin. And if I have an idea to make the car better, I first have to prove on the virtual model that I can improve the car before I can spend energy, resources and time building the car, right? I think you know what I'm going to show next. In 2020, for the first time, we are able to envision that we can build, based on the data I've shown you, a digital copy of man. Do you remember the tumor patient I've shown in the beginning? He had a digital, well, not a digital, a twin part of himself. Now we can digitize a human being. Far from perfect, not at all. But that twin is basically able to know such an amount of things that this will become my virtual doctor, who knows so much about me that now and then he can say, well, Koen, I have combined knowledge by using omics, biomarkers, by using sensors, which generate big data, wordless, cold, which makes machines smarter, but which help devices in your environment, the TV, a bottle of water, a friend, to provide me a behavioral change which I didn't expect to get from you as a doctor, and is exactly the change which keeps me healthy, which keeps me happy. And in order to visualize that, if you haven't seen the movie yet, download it one of these days. Big Hero 6. And Big Hero 6 is about 5 friends, which get to know a sixth one, a big inflatable doctor. This one, Baymax. And Baymax lives in a small, tiny box in my house, and poops, now and then appears and comes with a little bit of advice, an insight which I didn't know you could give to me. And this way, we are slowly moving back to that Chinese doctor who was with me, he lived amongst his villains, very close. He saw when something went off track and was able to correct. Using technology, we will be able to provide new services, completely novel experience to people, almost like magic. And this way, I believe, we start to become ready to go back to that Chinese doctor who got paid to remain me happy. And therefore, I'm going to send you home, not with a piece of technology, not with an advice to start implementing tomorrow. You will do. I've seen a lot of people taking pictures. But I will send you home with one question. What is it that you're going to do for your patient, for your partner, for your mom, or for your child, which he or she didn't expect to get from you? How will you basically provide delight as of tomorrow? Thank you very much. Questions, if any? Was this relevant? Yeah? Okay, thank you. No questions? I'm still here for half an hour, so if people dare to come to the floor, happy to answer, right? Okay, there is a question. Is there a mic? Yeah?
Well, thank you very much for this wonderful lecture.
Thank you for a brilliant lecture, and I have a question like this. Why do you think all these technologies, really impressive, are so slowly implemented in real healthcare and real clinic, not only in Russia, but over the world?
Yeah. It's a super important question. There's two key reasons. The first is the trust thing. A doctor still has to decide what's best for his patients. And a doctor is being taught like God. You think you know best. And all of a sudden, there is something which sits next to you and says, well, maybe I can do better. That's a hard thing for a brain to accept. And therefore, initially, a lot of technology has been pushed into the healthcare system. Didn't work. You have to turn it around. You have to make sure that the doctor, the nurse, the hospital has the ability to say, well, that is what we really need. And you have to make solutions where people say that they got involved from day one, from the beginning. And that's how we see that 5 years ago, people said, well, might not happen, maybe in the future, but not for me. And now doctors come to us and say, well, what can we do to be part of this revolution? Yeah? Please. In Russia or? Oh.
So maybe you can tell us something about cancer therapy.
Yeah. The thing is, different topic, but there's two big themes in oncology right now. The first theme is the fact that we better understand why in the past our immune system didn't recognize a tumor. And we have the first ways now to reteach the immune system to recognize our tumor, which requires that we get immune cells out of the body, that we modify them in the lab and bring them back into the patient, teaching our immune system to fight. And that's the theme of immuno-oncology. The challenge is, just like with all the old drugs, that we don't have a proper tool to find out who will respond to the therapy. And that is why we still need to profile our patients. That we still want to have as lot as possible genomic, transcriptomic, and protein data, trying to find out, well, whether you will respond and why someone is not responding. And so far, we only had biology to look at. But now it becomes fascinating we can start to use sensor data to have so much insight to classify, for instance, drug responders from non-responders, that we have the first data which, for instance, allow us to make a facial picture of a patient, and based on the facial expression, we can almost predict whether he or she will respond to therapy. So we start to see that this entire digital world enters into the classical oncology world, and which helps doctors to basically characterize patients better and to distinguish patients from each other. And for that reason, yes, you have a tremendous field of immuno-oncology, but you need kind of sensor tools to allow these technologies to really fulfill their promise. And for that reason, while we still fight, I think the best advocacy I can bring for the future is trying to predict things in time and not wait till they get as bad as you have seen. And that's why we advocate for new ways to predict things and, in an ideal world, to start preventing things.
Здравствуйте. Вы затронули...
Good afternoon. You have touched upon a problem of trust to the organizations and doctors who collect all this information about behavior of a person, detailed information. And my mom, for instance, is really afraid of new technologies because she believes that this data can be used by somebody else. I don't know, maybe some bodies, police bodies and cheaters and so on. I don't know how it is in Europe with the situation, but in Russia, unfortunately, this information is not properly protected, and it can well, go to some unpredictable places. How do you fight this problem? Thank you.
Again, a super fair question, and no one will be able to avoid wrong things from happening. Everything can be hacked, let that be clear. Everything can be hacked. You cannot make something super secure. But having said that, if you can start to think about ways where your mom sees a number of advantages, where she says, if you can convince me that something is secure, I'm not afraid to share things, then I think you can start to turn the world upside down. And let me give you one example. Very often people are afraid that an insurance company might find out that I will get cancer. Because then they say, well, I will no longer insure you, right? We have the first insurance company now, which is insuring ladies with breast cancer only when you get your genome sequenced first. So they can tell the chance that you survive, 80%, the 6 months that you cannot take care for your children and cannot work, they take care for you. After 6 months, you're okay, and people seem to be willing to take all the rest of the policies back to the insurance company. So they have turned the model upside down, a glass half empty into a glass half full. I want to know, I want to share with my insurance that I'm sick. And that's how we are trying to solve your grandmother's fear. Showing her new business models, new approaches, where by keeping data into secure lockers, and sometimes it's blockchain based, sometimes it's by anonymizing things, which I don't believe is a good solution, because I can really hack everything, that she will start to realize that the benefits of willing to share will outweigh protecting herself and getting sick in the first place. Okay? Oh, yeah, there is one more question there.
Well, first of all, thank you, Dr. Kass, for this interesting information. I would like to ask you, as you are oncologist, you have provided so many examples of innovative gadgets. Could you please tell, is it not going to have a correlation with the increase of oncological diseases?
That's a fantastic question as well. First of all, two things. In Europe, the States and Japan, and I haven't studied here in Russia, but in Europe, States, Japan, for every 100 euro, dollar or yen we spent 90 euro to the last 2 years of our life, and less than 1 euro to prevention. So if we can start to take 10% from the 90 and bring that to prevention, then we will have enough money not to have end-stage people with cancer, end-stage diabetes. And this way, the redistribution of money, for instance, for a diabetic patient who gets blind and who needs to be at the dialysis machine and who needs replacement kidneys, which makes it super expensive, that amount of money you can provide to behavior change, to learn me to change behavior with lifestyle and environment. So that's the first answer to your question, that we can redistribute sick care budget to healthcare budget, one. But then the risk that more prevention and more screening leads to higher costs. Well, the majority of you has a car, and your car has airbags, right? When people started to develop airbags, in the beginning that was not perfect. So imagine you have a car, 100 cars, and 5 cars have an accident, and 5 airbags come out, you say fine, right? But if 10 airbags come out, that's bad. If 1 comes out, that's also bad. That's false positives and false negatives. Currently, we're not yet there that it's 5 in 5. Technology is in the stone ages, it makes mistakes. So we'll have to come to having the airbag coming out only when required. And that is why technology will have to get better, will become better, so that we can be able to trust that once we start to provide screening protocols, that we don't increase fear, that we don't increase anxiety and hypochondria, but that we have it right, just like the airbag has it right. Okay? All right, I think I ran over time. Thank you very much, and send you home happily. Thank you.